We speak so often of brokenness in religious life. Let us speak today of wholeness. You are welcome here, all of you, every part of you, beautiful just the way you are. Here you do not need to be something more or something less. No holding back, no hiding, no exerting yourself, no trying to do more or be more. You have inherent worth and dignity, just the way you are. Nothing to prove here. Nothing to prove to me or the person sitting next to you or to the children or to anyone. You don't have to try and be witty or more quiet or more outgoing. You are beautiful, every part of you beautiful just the way you are. You do not need to change anything about yourself to be welcome here. Your skin, your hair, your belly, your limbs, your face, all beautiful just the way they are. You are extraordinary, each and every one of you different from each, and each beautiful in your own beautiful way. Breathtaking. Let us worship together. At this time, we'll light our candles of community. You can light a candle for a joy or a concern or simply to bring more light into our space.
Come, come, whoever you are, wanderer, worshiper, lover of leaving, ours is no caravan of despair. Come yet again, come, 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 whoever you are, condemn, worshipper, lover you leaving, ours is no worshipper, lover is leaving, ours is no caravan of despair. Come yet again, condemn, worshipper, lover you leaving, ours is no worshipper, lover is leaving. Come yet again, come.
Let us stand in body or spirit for our chalice lighting and our spoken affirmation. We light this chalice to celebrate the inherent worth and dignity of every person, to reaffirm the historic pledge of liberal religion to seek that justice which transcends mere legality and moves toward the resolution of true equality, and to share that love which is ultimately beyond even our cherished reason, that love which unites us. Let us join together in the spoken affirmation. Love is the spirit of this church, and service is its law. This is our great covenant to dwell together in peace, to seek the truth in freedom, and to help one another. You may be seated. Our opening thought comes from Charles Eisenstein from his work, Climate, a New Story. He writes, "We never were separate from nature and never will be, but the dominant culture on earth has long imagined itself to be apart from nature and destined one day to transcend it. We have lived in a mythology of separation."
We are building a new way. We are building We are building a new way, feeling stronger every day. We are building a new way. We can feed our every need. We can feed our every need. Every need. We can feed our every need. Start with love, that is the seed. We can feed our every need. Peace and freedom is our cry. Peace and freedom is our cry. Peace and freedom is our cry. Without these our world will die. Peace and freedom is our cry.
Our next reading comes from a friend of mine, Rufus Burrow, and his work, Personalism, A Critical Introduction. He writes, "This type of personalism does not allow one to merely address the separate parts of reality. Rather, one is forced by personalistic methodology to see the parts in relation to each other and to the whole. Therefore, though one may choose to abstract a given aspect or element for isolated discussion, for example, nature, one must finally consider it, like nature, in relation to other aspects, and finally in relation to the whole of reality. As a worldview, personalism presents its own case for the interrelatedness of all things." For our meditation this morning, we'll be hearing from a writing by Andrew Hill, Great Unity Beyond All Differences. Let us take a breath in and out. In, out. Out of a troubled world of expediency and selfish strife, we come to this place set apart for the renewal of vision. Great unity beyond all differences, should our lives be narrowed by personal sorrow or tragedy, envision us with a sense of worth. Should we be weary of the diminishing purposes of community and the persistence of global conflicts, envision us with your larger purpose. Should we feel lost upon Earth's lonely cosmic shore, envision us with joy and wonder. Uphold us when weak, embrace us when broken, transform us when partial. Restore us to your great unity, that we and the green earth and the cosmic law may become as one. Great unity, bless us now in this moment of worship with your vision. Amen.
Spirit of life, come unto me. Sing in my heart of the stirrings of compassion. Blowing, blowing, rise in the sea, move in the hand, giving life the shape of justice. Roots hold me close, wings set me free. Spirit of life, come to me, come to me.
Our next reading comes from Dorothy Day, from The Long Loneliness, the autobiography of the legendary Catholic social activist. She writes, "We have all known the long loneliness, and we have learned that the only solution is love, and that love comes with community."
All architects of fate, working in these halls of time, some with massive deeds and great, some with ornaments of rhyme. For the structure that we raise, time is with materials filled. Our todays and yesterdays are the blocks with which we build. Build today, then strong and sure, with a firm and ample base, and ascending and secure, shall tomorrow find its place.
As I began the discourse this morning, I remember with thankfulness Rufus Burrow, whose words I read a few moments ago, who unfortunately we lost during COVID. And I'm thinking of him this morning because his views on the person were very influential on mine, and he also studied with mentors that we shared together at Boston University. So I'm thankful and grateful for his life and his work this morning. I'm going to be working some more with the thought of Kate Rayworth today. I talked about Kate Rayworth last time I was here when we looked at her work called Donut Economics. We've been having a book discussion on Zoom over the past 4 weeks. That's actually going to be ending this coming Friday. We've had a good discussion about ways to do our economy, work our economy out in such a way that we lessen the amount of human deprivation that we're experiencing in the world, and also lessen the amount of ecological degradation that we're experiencing in the world. The Oxford economist Kate Rayworth also has some, I think, very helpful ideas about human nature and who we are as persons and how that factors into the way that we should live together and the way that we should do our economics. Rayworth rightly points out that the economic image of the person that we've had recently, and unfortunately the dominant economic image of the person as an individualistic consumer, is, as she puts it, a reductionist cartoon caricature of who we really are. It's a cartoon caricature of who we really are. Our full personhood is much more rich. Our full personhood is much more complex. We are so much more than just consumers. We are embodied and embedded in human communities, and we are embodied and embedded within a larger ecological community of all life. So when we allow ourselves to be defined as consumers, we become objectified, depersonalized. We become a quantifiable unit within an economic system that treats us and nature as commodities to be bought and sold, to be extracted from and consumed. Persons as consumers. If we're seen only as consumers, we become opportunities for profit rather than beings with intrinsic value within a world of sacred and inherent worth. Only a society that has reduced persons to consumers would accept treating corporations as persons. Persons are more than consumers, and corporations are not persons. Rayworth makes the case that we must push back against this cartoonish economic caricature of our personhood as simply being consumers. She argues that for us to take the full person seriously, we must see that we are not just self-interested. We are also socially reciprocating. We also reciprocate with each other in community. We care for each other in community. As persons, we do not have fixed consumeristic preferences, but rather we have fluid and complex values. We are not isolated individuals. We are interdependent members of diverse and pluralistic communities, a dynamic global network, not just a network that's one thing, but a network of networks of human beings throughout the world. Rayworth says we need to move from acting as if we are dominant over nature to living into our dependence on nature. Humanity, she says, is woven deep into nature's web. We are embedded in the living world. We're not separate. We're not above it. We live within it. We live within the biosphere, not simply living on the planet. Life is less like, she says, a hierarchical pyramid and more like an interconnected web. And we, as humans, we are invited to see ourselves not at the pinnacle of all life, not as the pinnacle of all life, but rather as a participant in the community of all life on earth. Rayworth invites us to move beyond human-centered or anthropocentric values and to recognize and respect the intrinsic value of all living things. She invites us to see our ecological community not simply as a storehouse of resources, but as a network of relationships. Hers is a vision of the person as a person in community. The person as a person in ecological community. Another vision of this kind of holistic personhood can be found in the work and thought of one of my mentors, Walter Mulder, who was also a mentor of Rufus Burrow, whose work we read from a few minutes ago. Walter Mulder lived from 1907 to 2004. He was dean of Boston University School of Theology from 1945 until 1972, and he was also a mentor to Martin Luther King Jr. And he was one of the theological and philosophical giants of a school of thought that most people haven't heard of, but I've mentioned it a few times with you before. It's called the Boston Personalist tradition. It's most well known for its influence on Martin Luther King. I was very fortunate to take the very last two classes that Walter Mulder ever taught. I took a class on the theory and practice, ethical theory and practice of economics, and also a course on the theology and ethics of personalism that he taught. He was one of the most important teachers and mentors for me in my own development as a person. And those of you who may have heard of him or are fortunate enough to ever perhaps known him or learned from him in some way, you might understand what an impact he had on me and so many others. Perhaps more than any other person within the Boston personalist tradition, Mulder emphasized the communitarian nature of the person. Mulder describes the person as a socius with a private center, basically saying that the person's relations to the community and the integrity of the person's experience are tightly woven together. The person in community does not exist outside of relations with the community. But the person also is not just the sum of his or her relations. He wanted to make sure that persons held some integrity as persons, as individuals, but also were seen as a part of a web of relationship within community, not just human community, but also the ecological community. Mulder wrote, "Wholes have qualities which the parts or components do not have. Wholes have qualities which the parts, components do not have." It was a holistic vision of the person. And he wrote about this and he talked about this at the American Philosophical Association on December 28th, 1994, a day that I remember as one of the days in which I was more nervous than perhaps any other day in my life, because Walter Mulder asked me, a 28-year-old graduate student at the time, to be one of the 2 respondents to his paper, Person as Embodied and Embedded, at the American Philosophical Association conference in Boston, Massachusetts. He asked 2 people to respond to this, a 28-year-old graduate student, me, and the then Dean of Boston University School of Theology, Robert Neville, who's also one of the most well-known philosophers in the 20th century in the United States. So I was shaking in my shoes at that time, but also really grateful that someone like Walter Mulder, who was so well-known, would take the time to have a graduate student be in interaction with him, to be in communication with him about these ideas. Mulder recognized the reality and value not only of human persons, but of the community of all life. And thus his position has come to be known as, this is a mouthful, you don't have to remember this, but it's called eco-communitarian personalism. Eco-communitarian personalism, which is just a fancy philosophical way of saying that we are all persons in ecological community. Mulder's view of our intimate connection with nature and his view that non-human beings are also centers of value led him to adopt Albert Schweitzer's position that human persons should practice a reverence for life. A reverence for life. If we take this seriously, we'll see that the way for humanity is to cultivate beloved community. To cultivate beloved community through the practice of loving all, doing justice, liberating the oppressed, serving the most vulnerable, and caring for the community of all life on earth. And if religious communities take this vision seriously, we will not continue to measure success primarily in the same quantifiable manner that we measure economic success. If you look at churches, they often do that. If you look at religious communities, they often measure their success in the same quantifiable manner that we measure economic success. We are no longer able, when we do that, when we focus on economic success within our religious communities, we are no longer able to offer a personalizing and prophetic imagination for a new way of being in the world that focuses on the quality of human flourishing within a thriving ecological community. A thriving religious community is one that contributes to this prophetic vision. It's one that energizes the community for its implementation. It's not simply a large number of people who experience endorphin-inducing entertainment once or twice a week. Though I will say that bell this morning did induce some endorphins. It's not a community that simply gathers in an impressive complex of buildings with a healthy cash flow and clergy whose salaries compare to those of a CEO of a large corporation and whose agendas are set by whomever puts the largest amount of money in the offering plate. This is not the vision of a thriving religious community. We need religious communities to be a place where it is safe to be our full persons and not some cartoonish caricature of ourselves as individualistic consumers. We need religious communities where it is safe to be our whole selves, with all of our complexities, with all of our uncertainties, with all of our passions and compassion, with all of our strengths and weaknesses. A place where it is safe to be who we are, while at the same time challenging each other, challenging one another to participate more fully in just and beloved community. May we find ways to joyfully work together to make it so. Amen. At this time, we'll have our time of giving. You can give at the table and you can give online, and no matter how much you give, it will not set my agenda.
Receive, to you I give, together we share, and from this we live. From you I receive, to you I give, together we share, and from this we I receive, to you I give, together we share, and from this we live. From you I receive, to you I give, together we share, and from this we live.
Our world is one word. What touches one affects us all. The seas that wash us round about, the clouds that cover us, the rains that fall. Our world is one word. The thoughts we think affect us all. The way we build our attitudes with love or hate, we make a bridge or wall. stand or fall. Our world is one world, just like a ship that bears us all, where fear and greed make many holes, but where our hearts can hear a different call.
Let us stand together in body or spirit for our parting thought and the extinguishing of the chalice. Our parting thought comes from Thomas Berry and his work, The Wild and Sacred. He writes, "The destiny of humans cannot be separated from the destiny of earth." Let us join together in extinguishing the chalice. We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts until we are together again.